You mentioned Tier 1 markets and this being an FBC event, Fox broadcast. In the new deal with ESPN, there's no mention of ABC. Are there still going to be kind of higher tier Canadian events, or not Canadian events, sorry, but higher tier kind of network style events that are going to be bigger than a lot of the other fight nights with this ESPN deal?
Yeah, so I mean, the important thing to first recognize is the ESPN deal is U.S. only. And the way that it breaks down is, we're going to have 42 events a year. 12 of those will be pay-per-view. So ESPN will get those pay-per-view prelims on ESPN Linear. That leaves 30 events. Of those 30 events, 10 will be on ESPN Linear, and 20 will be on ESPN Plus, their digital OTT subscription network. And so why that's important is that we've got a considerable amount of an increase in events that will be on ESPN Linear, which is, a channel that's relatively easy to find. It's a channel that's distributed in many homes across the U.S. And so for us, the ability to get exposure via ESPN's linear channels is a huge, huge opportunity for us. So to your question, when it comes to whether or not we'd have these kind of Fox broadcast type events, yes, we will continue to have those. There will just be more of them because of the increase of ESPN linear events that we will have.
Oh, great. So the ESPN linear, that sheds a lot of light on that. The ESPN linear events, the 10 of them, not the pay-per-view prelims, are going to be,
Correct.
there's going to be a lot of weight thrown into those. And I guess also in the prelims for the pay-per-views.
That's correct. Yep, that's correct. And then I think the other thing to recognize is that ESPN Plus becomes the pay-per-view distributor. So now we've got a TV broadcaster that is incented to promote the pay-per-view events, and we feel that's going to just kind of help, lift the level of support and exposure that we've got for our marquee events.
I've seen a lot of international viewers curious about how the ESPN Plus cards will be accessed, and I'd imagine obviously international consumers won't have an issue seeing them somehow, some way. But is that package being built to be formatted for digital and not television in terms of the pacing of those particular cards?
No, that's incorrect. I mean, these events are going to be produced as a live TV show, and the distribution platform will just be dependent on the country that we're in. So I'll give you a good example. I mean, if you are in the U.S. and you've got ESPN and you're going to watch a UFC on ESPN Plus Fight Night, you will see it on the digital subscription network. If you are in the UK, you will see it on BT Sport. If you're in Australia, you'll see it on Fox Sports Australia. So we're producing these shows for a live TV sporting event. And the fact is, if you're in the U.S., you'll get it via a digital platform, but you'll also get it through a linear platform if you're in, another country where the broadcaster is distributing the event on TV.
Okay, great. That should answer a lot of the questions that I think people in the international community have had about that. So the ESPN deal, as I mentioned, does answer a lot of questions in terms of how many shows there will be. But I think there are still a couple things. I acknowledge that you may not be able to answer some of these questions. But card start times, are they going to continue to be 10 p.m. main card starts for the most part?
Yeah, we haven't contemplated any change in time, especially because, we want the kind of appointment viewing of our pay-per-views to be at 10 p.m. Eastern and 7 p.m. Pacific. I mean, people are creatures of habit, and there's this kind of dependencies. I mean, when we shift the time period, we went to 9 p.m. Eastern and 6 p.m., I think, in 2011 maybe.
Yeah, I remember.
And that kind of freaked out a lot of people, and we saw a pretty dramatic shift in the viewership, so that's why we switched it back. We haven't necessarily contemplated any change in the start of the pay-per-views. What is beneficial to the new ESPN deal is that there is a contemplation, or at least some guidelines, on the number of what we're calling off-prime events. So events that if we hold them in, not necessarily Australia, but if we hold them in, say, Asia or in certain parts of Europe, they will be prime time locally. So say this summer, we're going to Hamburg in July. This event will be in prime time in Hamburg to help develop the local market, because if you're there locally, the best time to see the event is in the evening, in prime time. That means that back in North America, we will be viewing these events typically in, say, the afternoon if it's a local event in Europe. And so this kind of opportunity gives us the ability to focus on the growth of the business internationally, which we haven't really had the luxury on in the current deal.
Absolutely, yeah. That certainly will help those local markets, because I remember there were times where, you'd, I guess, have it for a 10 p.m. Eastern start, and it would be like the middle of the night there. So that will certainly
exactly.
assist. Yeah.
Well, I'll give you a good example. I mean, last September we were in Tokyo, and we had some of our guys, the first operation guys, that showed up at the arena, at Saitama Arena in Tokyo at 4 a.m. were, before the lights were on, they were using their cell phone lights to actually navigate themselves through the venue. And the first fight ended up being at like 7 a.m. or something like that. So not very convenient for a local market, either from a viewership perspective or a ticket sales perspective. But it was great for the U.S. and Canada. Now it'll be switched around where we can help develop these local markets.
And the press release also mentions there's going to be 12 pay-per-views. Are the UFC going to continue to use the same pay-per-view model as they are now in terms of distribution, or are there going to be some changes on that front?
No, I think it's going to largely mirror what we've got going in 2018. I mean, we're going to have some of the traditional distributors, cable and satellite distributors in the U.S., DirecTV, In Demand, Ubiquity, and Dish. In Canada, Bell, Shaw, Rogers, SaskTel, and Videotron. In Australia, where there's pay-per-views, we'll just continue to distribute through Foxtel and through Fetch. But we will also see a continued growth of some of the digital platforms like YouTube, like Amazon, like Xbox and PlayStation, platforms that, while are a bit, relatively new versus some of the traditional distributors, are platforms where our fans are saying, hey, guys, we need to be able to watch pay-per-views through these alternative methods, and we'll continue to foster the growth of those distribution platforms.
And, of course, ESPN Plus and Fight Pass, as you mentioned earlier. So it's the rematch between Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier. They have unfinished business from their no-contest fight that took place last May in Dallas. They settled a score in Calgary July 28th on a card that includes former champions Jose Aldo, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Pre-sale tickets are available now. Tickets for the general public go on sale this Friday. Dave, it's a pleasure having you on the show. Really looking forward to that Alvarez and Poirier fight. Stakes are higher than the last time they fight. We don't know what's happening with Conor McGregor. There could be a title shot at stake. That's
right. Well, thanks for the support, Aaron. We're looking forward to getting back to Calgary in the summer, and I'm thrilled. I'm really stoked for this Poirier Alvarez fight. It should be a beauty.
That was UFC Vice President of International and Content Dave Shaw. Fellow Torontonian.
Great interview.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and he was very, very forthright with me and in terms of the new TV deal with ESPN and ESPN Plus, at least in the United States, and how that affects international, because as the VP of International, I'm sure that a lot of the stakeholders overseas and even in Canada, to an extent, when the ESPN Plus deal was announced, I got a lot of tweets from worried Canadians that they wouldn't be able to get these fights.
But, you and I both, yes.
Yeah. But the UFC are not naive enough to put
what a 2018 response.
Plus,
how does this affect me?
Yeah. But it's true. A lot of people are like, well, we can't get ESPN Plus in this country. But
I think that's totally valid.
We can't get Fox Sports 1 in this country.
We just want to make sure they can see these cards. There's going to be a lot of them. Yeah.
There will be a lot of them, and those will be televised internationally or potentially on digital platforms, I guess, if they want to go in that direction. But with what Dave said, it seems like they're probably going to target television for the overseas markets.
Right, which I found interesting, the fact that, these are going to be produced as live television specials.
Yeah, so it's kind of the flip side of what a lot of people were saying, because a lot of people were saying, oh, these ESPN Plus events are going to be great because the pacing is going to be better. No dice.
It sounds like we're going to get the FS1 style of presentation.
Yeah, so, as an East Coast viewer, what, it's funny, I complained, I was like, oh, man, our card started at 10 p.m. here, and we're up till 2. I wish they made them earlier. And then all these people from the Middle East and the UK were sending me angry messages like, mate, we're up till 4 a.m. We have to wake up at 4 a.m. to watch these cards. And I was like, okay, yeah. I guess you do have a lot worse than I do.
Yeah, one of the things that's, some people might overlook is that for a lot of these streaming platforms, and I've seen this firsthand from the WWE Network, is one of the big metrics they push is numbers of hours consumed. Very much incentivizes these services to produce the longest events possible, because you've got a captive audience. Get 7 hours out of them as opposed to cramming it in 4, for instance, even though it, to me, would be a much more enjoyable viewing experience that we see with the Fight Pass pacing.
Yeah, and one thing that this TV deal does that I said in the lead up to the TV deals, I guess, while they were being negotiated, was for ESPN Plus, they're probably not going to put their premium fighters on it. Like, now they can take, if they're going to have those 10 linear events and prelims on ESPN, put your best foot forward for those events. And then if you're a big enough UFC fan, you're paying $5 a month for ESPN Plus. Whatever they put on, I think people will watch. Do you agree?
Yeah, and I find it interesting what Dave mentioned as well, the fact that, and we knew this when the deal was announced, that you're going to be able to buy these pay-per-views through ESPN Plus. So it incentivizes the broadcaster to promote the pay-per-views, which wasn't always it wasn't the dynamic at Fox, where the best fights are on pay-per-view. Where is the incentive for Fox to really push hard a pay-per-view that they don't reap any reward from?
All the ESPN broadcasts can say you can buy the pay-per-view on ESPN Plus.
Exactly.
Buy the pay-per-view on ESPN Plus and hammer that home because they're going to get a good cut of that.
ESPN being a broadcast partner in the pay-per-view front, that's kind of a small wrinkle to this deal. That's a very important one.
Yeah, absolutely. And they still have Amazon on board as well as YouTube and some other distributors and even Fight Pass you can buy pay-per-views on. So they're just
when you order
their
pay-per-views,
reach.
where do you watch on traditional pay-per-view? Do you order it digitally?
I watch it here in the office.
Oh, look at you.
Or I go to the event, but I'm not the best person to ask. But yeah, previously I would either go to a bar or I'd buy it.
Okay, cool.
Before I was covering the sport.
I found a lot of